Sure. Well, I think the first problem is the evidence. I mean, you know, there's a 238-page sentencing document from Judge Moro, and you can't really find any documentary evidence that Lula accepted, or his wife accepted, a bribe of any kind. And of course, the money laundering charge is just an extension of that. So without the bribe, there's no money laundering either. And so the whole case turns on, without any corroborating evidence, documentary evidence, other witnesses, it all turns on the testimony of Pinheiro, who was an executive of the OAS construction company, and he got over 80% of his 16-year sentence reduced for testifying against Lula. And it was even worse than that, because Folha de Sao Paulo reported that the plea bargaining was cut off for a while, because he gave the same story that Lula did about this apartment that was supposedly the bribe, and then they cut off his plea bargaining until he changed his story and gave them the story that implicated Lula in a crime. But that's really not enough to convict. I mean, one witness, no other evidence. I mean, it's an apartment. He supposedly owned it. There should be some evidence that he owned it, and they didn't have that. So that's the first thing. They didn't really have much of a case to convict somebody. And you know, it's kind of interesting, when I wrote this piece, at the end, the editors at the Times decided they wanted links in English instead of Portuguese, which makes sense. It's an English piece, and I thought, okay, that should be easy. And then, you know, most of these basic facts I just told you, I couldn't find them in English anywhere. So I mean, I'm sure they weren't all over the Brazilian press either, but at least you could find them. And here you couldn't. You couldn't find some of the most important facts about the case. So that tells you, you know, what kind of a job the international press did on this. Now, the other thing about it, of course, is the demonstrated partiality of Judge Moro, first of all, who did a number of things to show that he was against Lula. One of them was to have that police raid on his house when Lula had always voluntarily submitted to questioning, was willing to submit to more questioning, and he sends these police to the house and drags him away and detains him and notifies the media in advance so that they can record the whole spectacle. So that was very bad, and then he illegally leaked to the press, and he had to apologize to the Supreme Court for this. He leaked these conversations between Lula and his attorney, Lula and Dilma, and other private conversations. So that's enough. I mean, you know, in the U.S., a judge like that would, at the very least, they'd be recused from the trial. And there he is, and he's painted as a hero. And he's painted a hero in the U.S. And in fact, he's come to the U.S. He had a State Department fellowship here in the U.S., and he's come here a number of times. And so he seems well connected with the foreign policy establishment here, and that has raised a lot of suspicions as well as to his motivations.